a live, copyrighted presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for RadioLawTalk.com with your host, Frederick Penny, attorney at law. And now, RadioLawTalk.com.
When you're tired of politics radio, roll into Radio Law Talk. You can talk to Todd Cunin, Fred Penny, Denise Dirks, and Chris Rodriguez about the law and have fun talking about it. I'll tell you right now, those of you who are listening to us, you got to listen to Todd Cunin. He's sick. Listen to his voice. Go ahead, Todd.
I don't know what anybody wants to say about me, but I'm having a good time being here. It's only hitting my voice. I'll be hosting the Radio Law Talk After Dark segment.
That's what we said. Chris rolls in and going, oh my gosh, why don't you talk about being tired? We would like to do a station break right now with Todd Cunin
and now
at Sleepy's.
And now, Deep Thoughts About Law Talk by Todd Cunin. What do you call it? A recent report was over. This is a joke I heard last week on last week's show. They're answering the identity or the question that there are too many lawyers in California. If you took every lawyer in California and laid them end to end along the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, it would be a good start.
I know. That was one of our...
I have used that joke so much in the last week.
That was Dan Brown from the Bay Area that came up and talked to us. But you know what? Remember, if you want to call in, our phone number is 855-1-855-LAW-RADIO. And if you want to tweet us, you can tweet us at any time at Radio Law Talk. Go to our website, www.radiolawtalk.com, to listen live, which a lot of you do. And we want to talk about a couple of things tonight. Don't forget, we've got, let me go over really quickly who's sitting here at the table. Because Cal brought it up one time. He said, tell what everybody does. A lot of people don't know what we do. We're lawyers, but they don't know what we do. Todd Cunin is a criminal lawyer and was a former district attorney and brings a good perspective from both sides of the table. Denise is my favorite friend and by far my favorite co-host. And
I'm the only one.
Yeah, she is a family law attorney all over the state of California. Chris Rodriguez does employment law, corporate and business law transactions and trials. And I'm a personal injury lawyer doing everything under the sun, including mass torts, which we're going to talk about today is the talc powder case with Johnson & Johnson, where the massive verdict just came down. And by the way, my partner's friend is the lawyers that came down with that good verdict. In fact, he was talking to him about it, so I have a little bit of insight about it. But kind of the most important thing we need to talk about today before we get started is Cal. And Cal doesn't know this, but what's happening is we're working on our website, and it's looking really good. And I sent it to Cal. And we were talking to the IT people, and the IT people are laying out, the pages, and the one page is hosts, panel lawyers, and I still remember the IT guy going, "What do you do with Cal? Where do we put him?" And I said,
"Oh man,
wow."
Here we go."
I was looking at him. We were scratching our head. I said, he definitely needs to go underneath the lawyers.
You should say, well, where's the very last page in the lower left-hand corner?
Yeah. No, I said, the disclaimers at the very bottom?
Nice.
So we click the disclaimers, and a picture of Cal comes up. That's what I said we'd do. There's our disclaimer. We're using Cal Hunter as our producer. Disclaimer. Whatever he does is just, crazy. But it's funny how we, those of you who don't know, we set up a brand new studio. Our studio's gorgeous, by the way, and it's all new. And Cal has worked in the radio for 5 billion years. And a lot of the stations he's worked at, the kind of the older stuff and older tech stuff, and he's looking at the board when he first rolled in. You can see him shaking his head. And those of you who don't know what's happened with Radio Law Talk, our first was Denise. I think our first 3 shows were not. We just didn't run them at all. We just did it as a practice.
Rehearsal shows.
Yeah, rehearsal shows. I think Cal must have made 1,000 mistakes the first day, and not that we made any mistakes.
Oh no.
But we had a great time. But this this equipment that Cal's trying to figure out was interesting. But and then I'm switching things up today. You guys notice what I've switched up? Chris, you notice what have I switched up?
You took your glasses off.
No. Okay, so he doesn't know.
Look at his face, Chris.
Yeah,
That's a hint.
Wait,
Look at his
hold
face.
on. What about you, Denise? What have I switched up? Ooh, Denise is trying to figure it out too. Todd knows, I know.
I actually did notice your hair is a little poofier.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of it, but what's there is poofier.
It's called haircut.
Wow.
Oh, you got a haircut.
No, that's not what I'm. That's not the answer. Todd, you don't figure it out?
Well, I mean, I see a laptop sitting in front of you. That's a new addition here.
I've gone to the left side of my mouth with my mic.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to the left side with my mic this time because I see Rodriguez is a left-sided micer, and Todd is a left-sided micer, and Denise is a left-sided micer, and I've always been a right-sided micer. So I think this is kind of important for me to use the left side of the mic on, because if those of you can't see us live, we have the headphones with the mic. We don't have the big microphones out. You know why we don't have the big fat microphones like you see on TV when they run these? It's because this is easier to talk, and when you turn your head, you're not losing the mic. Since we're amateurs,
You heard it here on Radio Law Talk, folks. Fred Penny now leaning to the left.
He's not just leaning; he went left. And
Went
it was an
left.
instant conversion.
Yeah, I was
You're
right.
left too,
then I
Cal.
went left.
I am, because I use my right hand for most of the board push buttons, so I put it on my
Yeah.
left side, and Fred did it so he could write with his
Yeah.
right hand. Right.
Well, that's why he's used to his left hand, because his right hand he presses the buttons when he does the drive-through in Red Bluff to get his marijuana. So he's used
There's
to
not
his
a
right
drive-through in Red Bluff. It's in Shasta Lake City,
Oh.
A. B, I don't get my marijuana. I get it for a friend. And
And we're talking about Burning Man later today, so it's going to fit right in with our marijuana discussions. But and everyone who's listening to Radio Law Talk saying, why do you guys always bring up marijuana? Because really, we see the tweets, we see the social media, and we get a lot of responses from that. I think we're going to talk about it every single week just because it blows up. But what's blowing up right now is our not Instagram, our Facebook, all that stuff is the Burning Man stuff. We're going to talk about talc powder, Burning Man. We're going to talk about water and Nestle. We're going to talk about what else? We're going to
Brad
talk
Pitt.
about
Brad
Pitt. We're talking about Brad Pitt later on today. But here's what I want to go over. A couple of things. The first thing is I want to know, Denise, what you're doing. Because is it September 9th, I think, is the start, or September?
It starts the last
Sunday.
It
It
always
starts
goes
this Sunday,
Yes.
the 27th, and it goes until September 4th.
That is the Burning Man. Okay.
Correct.
It always starts the last Sunday of August and goes through the first Monday of September.
I notice you really know the dates and times and places all about that. Todd.
I'm in business for myself now, but it takes a while to get time off work.
I know. That's
You know,
true.
and there's a lot of stuff you got to do to prepare for Burning
So what are you
Man.
doing, Todd, to prepare for Burning Man?
Well, Burning Manites know that there are 10 principles of Burning Man, and one of them is called radical self-reliance.
Yes.
Which means you got to be responsible for doing everything yourself. So I am still trying to come up with a way to concoct my own sunscreen.
and body paint.
Yes.
You got to take your own.
And you can't just go out and buy it. Self-reliance. You got to make it yourself.
Right.
And I'm having a dickens of a time trying to come up with a perfect shade of yellow. But
Well, the problem I heard is that you're down there at Kelly Moore the whole time saying, I'd like 4 gallons of white paint, please.
yes, I know. And then when they bring it out, I'm like, okay, wait a second. Did I make this white paint? Am I adhering to the radical self-reliance because I didn't make this white paint? I bought it from Kelly Moore, and then I waffle and I leave and I come back. I mean, it's a headache.
Chris, what about you? What are you doing to prepare for it?
Well, I am trying to figure out my sexual orientation because
Look, everyone. Look at mine. I'm doing the neck thing.
yeah.
I'm moving my
Hey,
microphone back to the right.
We got 15
Time
seconds
out.
left. We got 15 seconds left. We'll be right back, and we'll cut Rodriguez's mic off. You can also call us at 1-855-LAW-RADIO and talk to us about all the exciting subjects we're talking about, especially Burning Man, which we're supposed to talk about in the third hour, but it's just rolling. Chris, you were talking about something.
Well, yeah, right before the break, you said, what was I trying to do to get ready to go to Burning Man? I said, I need to figure out my sexual orientation because apparently they ask people when they come there to fill out a little survey, and one of the questions is, what is your sexual orientation? And I didn't realize there were this many categories. And so I'm looking at all these categories. I always thought that I was just, your average red-blooded American male, but I could be attracted only to the opposite sex.
What's it say? It's got a list?
Yeah, maybe I'm attracted mostly to the opposite sex. Maybe I'm attracted to both sexes equally. Mostly the same sex, only the same sex. Not sure, which is where I am right now, frankly. Given all
A little
these choices.
confused?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. And then this is my favorite: no sexual attraction whatsoever, according to the. There you go, Cal. That's Cal.
That's when you hit 65, I thought.
But according to this, 1 in every 200 people who go to Burning Man have no sexual attraction whatsoever.
Really?
Which is shocking, because I thought that was kind of the number one reason why people went to Burning Man, was to, figure out which of these other buckets they fall in.
Let me just correct you there. That statistic refers to people who claim no sexual attraction whatsoever. Now, my guess is there's a bunch of guys out there going, oh, yeah, I'd like to join your group. Oh, no, I'm not weird. I have no attraction whatsoever to anybody. So you can completely sit right next to me and do whatever you want, and it doesn't faze me at all.
That's why I have no pants.
The fact that I'm pulling out a phone to record this, even though it's against the rules, is completely irrelevant. I have none whatsoever.
With the Kelly Moore paint next to you?
Yes, the Kelly Moore paint. I got to tell you, our call screener came in after I talked about the sunscreen and reminded us that apparently during the
last year,
recent eclipse last week, you're not supposed to look directly at the sun, and there were a group of shall we call it wannabe geniuses that decided that they would put sunscreen in their eyes so
this
that they
is true.
could. This is true. So that they could look at the eclipse and have no ill effects to their cornea as a result of this, and now have to go and get treatment from eye doctors because of the damage they did to their eyes by putting SPF 50 instead of
30 would have been better.
30 probably would. I don't know. Yeah, but
Is that why your eyes are so red, Todd?
I am not going to comment on that. I do have another appointment for treatment at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
That reminds me of the stuff I picked up for you got in the car.
Okay, good, yeah, because...
Was it through the drive-through in Shasta City or wherever that is?
It's self-induced glaucoma is what it is, and Cal said he was picking things up for a friend. Cal, I'll be your friend.
With you, man.
So I'm getting ready to go to the plaza. I've tried to locate the plaza, and I picked out my costume already.
All right, tell us.
And trying to locate all the domes, and find out all the little sub-domes that are around, and try to make my rounds.
What are you talking about, Burning Man?
Yes.
Does it have something to do with the top of a roof?
Could.
Kind of. It kind of does, really. I mean, it's like it's really kind of. If you've seen the pictures from Burning Man, except for the ones of Utah in the white paint, it's really quite a fascinating view of the human family on display there, of all types, really.
I got news for you, Cal. Those pictures, that was not white paint. That's just me without my shirt on. I walk outside and people are like, "Yo, Casper, put a shirt on, okay?"
Do they say "yo" or just Casper?
we could white balance a camera on your chest there. All right.
So, Cal, what are you doing to get ready for Burning Man?
Well, I have my body paint. I have my fire making materials, of course. Have my camera.
Yeah.
Because I love taking pictures of stuff. That's just how I am.
Yeah.
And then I actually have created my own little miniature Burning Man sculpture made out of matchsticks and chicken bones. I just thought I'd put in chicken bones for good luck. And my sexual orientation thing, are these the 6 that are listed on the State of California University application? Are they the same ones?
I don't know. We just work here.
We'll have to look that up. We'll have to look that
Cal,
up.
remember, we don't get paid to do this, so we don't have to look that up. We don't have to.
Before we change the subject, I want to know where Cal falls on these. Which bucket, Cal? Or combination?
Cal doesn't have a bucket.
My wife and I have had 9 children together. I would say that makes it self-explanatory.
I don't want to hear about that. Can we just cut it right there? Hey, we got a tweet in that wants to know, does it cost to get into Burning Man? Answer the question.
Yes, it's $450 to get into Burning Man, plus $80 for parking if you're going to park a vehicle. And the funny thing is, they have an average cost to go to Burning Man, if you're traveling by airplane and come bringing all your stuff in, and it's like $2,347. That's the average cost for one person to come into Burning Man.
Well, that's what it costs to take your old RV and make it all dirty and get old tires put back on it and to make it drive. Let me tell you, I've driven up I-80 many times near Reno, from Reno to Sacramento to San Francisco, and I've driven that after Burning Man's over. It is the most interesting thing to do. What you need to do is you need to park your car on the side of I-80 coming from Nevada heading towards San Francisco and just watch all the Burning Man vans, U-Hauls, motorhomes come by. It is the most interesting thing. First of all, there are about 40 feet of dust on everything because it's in Nevada. It's in the middle of Nevada. And by the way, we're supposed to get to this third hour, but this is so interesting. But you know what? It started in San Francisco originally.
Yeah,
but
Baker Park, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Baker or Black Park or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it is so cool to watch all those videos. To me, it's not like funny. I think it's like interesting, and just the paraphernalia on the different things on their motorhome and all kinds of like speedos hanging out the back and trailers with who knows the what's it and the who's it stuff on it. And
It rivals the hilarity that comes about sitting in the McCarran Airport in Las Vegas on a Thursday afternoon, watching all the people coming in to that area. And that's kind of a wild thing to watch.
Next,
all different types.
You guys, it started in 1986 on Baker's Beach in San Francisco.
Right. It's just a small get together and kind of I'm gonna call it a mini what did they do in the 60s? God, it tells you how young I am.
Like a Haight-Ashbury type of deal?
Kind of thing, or what do they call it, Cal? What's
just a summer of love, man.
Summer
That's
of
all,
love,
yeah.
but I don't know. In the 60s, what was that place they went?
Haight-Ashbury.
No, it's not. Okay, everyone's screaming at it, but we got 15 seconds left, so we're really going to talk about talc powder coming up in the next half hour, and then we'll get into Burning Man later. We'll be right back.
Radio Law Talk. I like that show.
From north of the 49th parallel or north of the border.
This is RadioLawTalk.com, and we couldn't be happier that you're with us. Fred, what's happening now? Did you remember Woodstock finally after the...
Yeah, the word is Woodstock that I was looking for. Doggone it. It was my mom and dad's era, but Woodstock was what I was thinking about. Hey, you know what? We talked about this before in our prior shows, but we are now getting into the Johnson & Johnson case, where a $417 million verdict was just handed down in California on August 21st. And by the way, it's my partner's friends that handled that case. And actually, he was talking to me when he's talking to them about it. Some interesting things. But we have these research students to do the research for us on a lot of this stuff. We're all really busy lawyers, and it is sure nice to be able to get someone to do some good quality research. And I'm telling you, Olivia Scott from Pepperdine University did all of our research for this segment and the next segment and the third hour segment, and she did an excellent job. In fact, my son, who's oversees this, is also a law student, and he said, "Dad, she did an excellent job. Look at this."
Yeah, it was
good. Great, Olivia. Thank you, Olivia
Knocked
Scott.
it out of the park.
Yeah, Pepperdine University. We thank Pepperdine University for doing this, and Olivia Scott. You are going to get a signed Radio Law Talk mug. Hey, Chris, if you leave a little bit early, that's very important. You make sure you sign a mug for Olivia on
Absolutely,
her way out.
absolutely.
But anyway,
Yeah, hopefully Olivia's still listening after the first two segments that had absolutely nothing to do with the law.
That's true.
Other than what lawyers talk about when they're not practicing law. A little glimpse into that.
You know why? That was real life. What we were talking about. Actually, real life was when everything was turned off during the commercials. That's real life. But,
Yes.
But it was, that's interesting stuff we talk about. We're just normal people that have a good time. Denise Dirks is here for one very important reason, to keep the three of us in line.
So let's talk about talc
Let's
and
talk
cancer.
about it. Go for it. So anyway, August 21st, it comes down. There has been also some other lawsuits, and this is a class action suit in Missouri that have already come down the pike, and they're getting hit with big verdicts. And let me tell you a little bit about the history of the Johnson & Johnson talcum powder or slash baby powder. Now, I'm going to throw a caveat in here. All you thinking, I'm not going to go use my baby powder now from Johnson & Johnson because there's something wrong with it. No, this starts back when they were first using this way back in the 70s. Actually, it started in 1893 was the first, quote, talcum type powder that Johnson & Johnson used. And it was used for this baby powder to help with nappy rash in 1893. Sounds like something that Todd Cunin usually has, but I'm not quite sure what nappy rash is. Do you know?
Well, I really can't talk about it too much because I haven't given the disclaimer that I'm supposed to other. I'm just not even going to go there.
Chris, do you know what nappy rash is?
I could tell you, but then I would be violating
Bunch of radio rules.
HIPAA violations. Yes,
That's true.
Yes, I can't disclose my own medical conditions without my permission, and I'm not giving it.
You're right. That's exactly right. HIPAA, by the way, is rules about disclosing people's medical history. But anyway, with nappy rash in 1893, and Johnson & Johnson, the powder became available to the public in 1894, and that's how long this has been going on. Now, there's two types. You have to understand. There's a talcum powder that originally contained asbestos. That sounds great. And then there's a talcum powder that is asbestos-free. Obviously, they've cleaned things up since then, but it comes down to people who have been using for a long time, and they're getting, and it's common, women are getting ovarian cancer for using it down in your crotch area, in your leg area, and then you're getting ovarian. Todd's smiling like, really? Is that what I can do?
Fred Penny, an expert on
Talc powder.
talc
By the
powder.
way, nappy rash is just simply diaper rash on a baby's bottom. That's all it is.
Well, it's moisture rash. It's
Right.
a rash caused from moisture.
Yeah, and
Prob-
it's on the bottom,
clearly,
yeah.
the boys to my left, I'm sure, have that.
You should have seen the look on Cal's face when you threw it to me and said, "Chris, what do you think of nappy rash?" And the look on Cal's face, he was trying to find the dump button before he even
I
answered.
panicked. I thought, oh no, here we go.
Here goes Rodriguez, Harvard boy, talking about. Yeah, the MIT guys are loving this. That Harvard boy's really screwing up again, isn't he?
At least
So-
we're not talking about who sings the latest Madonna song.
Yes.
That's true. He was messing up on that. Okay,
So-
go ahead, Johnson & Johnson. The issue is warning labels. Go ahead.
There you go.
Go ahead.
The issue is warning. This was a class action suit too. That's something to really pay attention to, because in a class action suit, you have to find that the class is so numerous that joinder of all the members is impractical. There are questions of common law and facts to the class. The claims or defenses of the representative parties are typical of the claims or defenses of the class as a whole.
It's basically the same for everybody. Kind of the
Yes,
same.
and the representative parties will fairly and adequately protect the interests of the class. Now, Eva Echeverra, I think is how it's pronounced. She was the representative plaintiff, and I do think there was only 5 in 6. There were 6 other women
Yes.
that had the same or similar type, and
It's an LA County Superior Court, and it's going on, but this one just came down, so there's 5 more coming up. No, my understanding is I think
Oh,
this
really?
is just for her, and there's more coming up.
No,
but I don't know. But I don't know.
No, she sued. She filed suit with 6 other women in LA
Okay,
County.
gotcha. But
Yeah, so
I'm
it's
not.
class.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to split up the verdict. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't know how.
I
that
don't know
goes.
how they're going to do it either, because 417 million is a big verdict.
So when you say that joinder is improbable to have it, what you mean by that is rather than having 6 different people file an identical lawsuit, or in a lot of times we see in class action lawsuits, it's hundreds of people file an identical lawsuit, and this person or entity that's being sued, rather than having to respond to 100 different people with almost identical stuff, they just all get together and one person sues kind of on behalf of everybody. They're the representative class.
Not just one person; it can be a group of persons.
But it's all combined into one action, and if the entity is found liable, then everybody in the class benefits from that.
Correct.
Correct.
And,
Okay.
And what's important to note is there's 2 class action areas. There's the California rules and the federal rules. They're very similar. I mean, we can sit there and differentiate them a little bit, but this one's under the California rules of civil procedure, and then there's the federal rules of civil procedure. But they're very similar, what Denise went over. But what's interesting is what Johnson & Johnson is saying, and Chris, we talked about this a while ago, is what happens in these cases? It's dueling experts, right? We all deal with dueling experts, and Denise, you do too, in the realm of law. And so what Johnson & Johnson is arguing is the experts that they relied on, and that is the plaintiffs in this case, were basically using conjecture, and I'm going to quote, they used, here's the quote, they were using the quote, more likely than not threshold. They were just kind of not hitting that properly. They were basically cherry picking data. There's not enough scientific evidence to prove the liability. So it's up. They're going to take it up on appeal, obviously. And Johnson & Johnson saying, your expert is using data and is picking and choosing and cherry picking the data to help the plaintiff side and not looking at the other data. That's generally what they're saying.
Yeah, and it's interesting, in these kind of cases, judges are sometimes the gatekeeper. So I'm sure the defense in this case asked the judge to make a ruling that after all the testimony came in, this shouldn't even have got to the jury because there wasn't any reliable scientific evidence that would show that talcum powder had any role in causing ovarian cancer. Because there are government studies. I mean, obviously, our government doesn't allow products to be sold if there's evidence that they cause cancer. And so Johnson & Johnson's point is we're not putting a warning on this product because it doesn't cause cancer. Just because some expert got up in court, and I use expert in air quotes, and said, yes, here's why I believe the talcum powder caused the cancer. You look at this fact and you look at that fact. And the judge let it get to the jury, and the jury bought it. That's what Johnson & Johnson's fighting with now.
Well, and it's interesting, you talk about experts, and you use the air quotes there. Attorneys often get a bad rap. They will litigate to your last nickel, or in the criminal defense realm, it's a reasonable doubt for a reasonable fee and all of that. But experts are an important part of the legal process, but you can find an expert that'll testify to just about anything. And, if there's 100 experts on one side saying this is what it is here, you can go out and find experts that will testify with just as much vigor that the exact opposite is true. And so it really gets to be a difficult situation when you're trying to find out who is actually providing expert testimony and who's being paid the most to testify. It gets to be a really dicey thing in the civil realm and the criminal realm.
Yeah, and in this case, that's kind of what Johnson & Johnson's arguing. It's like your experts just aren't relying on the proper facts, and they're just picking and choosing and cherry picking. But the jury heard it, and it's Southern California. Those of you who are out there, there's little venues. If we're up in Plumas County, it's different than L.A. County. That's going to be a little more liberal. We're going to continue talking about the Johnson & Johnson case right after this. This is Fred Penny, Radio Law Talk.
Hey, tweet us, radiolawtalk.com.
This is radiolawtalk.com.
I'm not quite sure if that music fits Burning Man or fits the talcum powder thing. I think it's Burning Man he's still playing, so I think that's what we're doing. But listen, let's talk again about the Johnson & Johnson verdict. Now, we're going to break the verdict down. The verdict was $70 million in compensatory damages. Compensatory damages means to compensate them, basically.
For the injury.
Yeah, for the injury. Now, she's dying. In fact, she's not going to live probably very long. And in fact, the plaintiff said, look, this is for the future, to have other people be able to bring this to light. And I'll tell you right now, whoever inherits it, I'm sure her family's going to be doing well for quite some time. But the amount of damages was $70 million compensatory, $347 million in punitive damages. Now, why did they do that, and what's the difference between compensatory and punitive damages? What a jury does, and a jury can do in cases like this, it depends. It's very hard on the plaintiff's side to get punitive damages. I mean, without getting into details, there are all types of hoops you got to jump through and discuss and prove. I mean, willful, wanton, reckless, disregard for punitive damages.
Malicious.
There's all these different, adjectives that you've got to prove to show that they are going to be hit or allowed to be hit with punitive damages. And again, that's the judge that's going to decide whether or not a punitive damages claim is going to come in. And that's what the jury hit him with, is $347 $347 million in punitive to punish them. And that's the purposes of punishing.
Well, as we talked about this case before we went into the break, if it was true and if there was evidence that was brought out that there were internal memos about the dangers of talcum powder and that this could happen, and the bottom line is, if the jury was presented with evidence that at some point in time Johnson & Johnson made an accounting decision and the evidence was presented that we're going to value profits over the safety of individuals, if that was what was ultimately presented to them, I could see a jury going, well, all right, if that's the decision you made from an accounting standpoint, then we're going to hit you as hard as we can in the profits aspect of it.
And it was plaintiff's position that J&J had awareness of this danger over several decades, and that whenever a person would use this powder for a prolonged period of time, it would result in ovarian cancer. And that was what the jury supposedly had evidence of.
Yeah, without talking details, and again, I was talking earlier on the break that I do know some more details about this case. I don't want to bring up because, again, my partner told me in his discussion with the plaintiff's lawyers. But really, in cases, you're going to find some interesting stuff in discovery, emails, discussions during meetings, what they know. They're experts and they're engineers and their scientists know and don't know. And if it shows that they kind of knew about this, like Todd was saying, but it's statistically cheaper financially cheaper just to let it go, then that's when they get hit with punitive damages. And again, I'm not saying that because I don't want Johnson & Johnson to say, hey, Radio Law Talk's, saying that we did something wrong. Well, I'm just going by what was said and what the jury's verdict was.
And that was my point as well. It was, if that was the evidence that was presented, not knowing everything, I could see a jury looking at that saying, well, if that's what was presented, this is...
You see this all the time in different areas of business. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of these business people. They come into work, and let's say you're selling a product like talcum powder, or you're manufacturing cars, or you're putting on a sport like the NFL. You are constantly studying your market and your product. And there's all kinds of people writing reports about all different kinds of things. You as the business person, as the CEO of that company or the chief risk officer, need to look at these things. And we've seen it repeatedly in American history that when you are that business person and you're in the office and you get that memo that says, geez, letting our players play football causes serious brain damage over time. What do you do with it? And what we've learned is most business people don't wave it in the air and say, hey, our product is bad. It causes damage. We need to do something about it now. Most of the time what they do is they hide it. They don't say anything about it, and they let their product continue to be sold, and they let people continue to get harmed. And when that occurs, that's where plaintiff lawyers come in.
And Johnson & Johnson, this isn't like an isolated case. Johnson & Johnson faces 4,800 similar type claims, and they've already been ordered to pay $300 million to plaintiffs in Missouri.
Right. And what's interesting about that, I'm going to jump on Johnson & Johnson's side right now. What's interesting about this started in in the late 1894, 1893. Let me tell you, Johnson & Johnson did not know the dangers of asbestos-based, which they're not doing now, by the way. It's my understanding. Asbestos-based talcum powder is going to harm someone. They didn't know that. I don't think they knew that I don't think they knew that in the 1940s and the 1950s. But it kind of rolls around the 1970s and 80s. I believe it was around the 1980s or the 1990s when they started to figure this out. I'm not quite sure. I know my partner told me, and that one I don't remember, but I know there was a certain time period they started to find out and they did know. But what it comes down to is you almost can't blame Johnson & Johnson. I mean, you like you said, you're making these products, these widgets, Chris, and no matter what, okay, in 35 years they're going to find out that this widget does cause someone to die from cancer. Oh my gosh, I mean, can you even function in today's society? And that's what a lot of business people are saying and arguing.
Yeah, I mean, like with this product, and Johnson & Johnson may be 100% right. I mean, you can still go to the market today and buy Johnson & Johnson's talc. So clearly there are some people high up in government and that have looked at this, and some very smart people, and concluded that this product is entirely safe.
Right.
The question is, when you start, studying your own product, I think probably what these memos in the Johnson & Johnson files are, and we're speculating, we haven't read these memos, we have no idea what they say, but my guess would be that they're more raising questions than definitively concluding that our product is dangerous. Hey, we ought to study what the long-term effects are of our product if somebody uses it every single day. I mean, how would you even study that, right? I don't think that there's going to be some smoking gun memo in Johnson & Johnson's files where they say, our product kills people, let's continue to sell it. It's a much grayer area, is my speculation on this.
Yeah, it's interesting to note, too, though, that I've reviewed my notes here, and it said before 1970s, that's when some of the talcum products were contaminated with asbestos, and it was also an issue of breathing it in too, not just the ovarian cancer issue.
Mesothelioma.
Thank you. Yeah, but also, you know what they used to use talcum powder for? Here's a little fact: they used to use talcum powder to prevent squeakiness in floorboards. So I don't know if you got a house in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, if you got talcum powder in between those floorboards to make them not so squeaky. Yeah. And, pool, what are you saying? Pool tables, Seth? So they use them in pool tables. Oh, that's right.
So you can get the thing to slide over your hand as you're aiming the pool
I was wondering why Seth had those sitting there in his nose all the time. Those little...
So Johnson & Johnson are definitely appealing this decision. So we're going to hear more about this as it gets through the appellate court. And there's another win for Johnson & Johnson. They actually won in a trial over Xarelto, which is a blood thinner.
Right.
And so Johnson & Johnson and Bayer together, they jointly developed the blood thinner Xarelto, and it was alleged that this blood thinner caused internal bleedings, and Johnson and Bayer did win that lawsuit very recently.
Cool.
So you win some, you lose some, is what we're saying.
Right.
But the most important thing is what? Who got paid?
The lawyers.
The lawyers.
The lawyers get paid. So as my father told me, when I was trying to figure out what to do in the world of making money for my family, he said, "Son," and my father was a police officer. "Son, I know one thing and one thing only. At the end of the day, everyone's laying down, and there's one person standing holding the money, and that's the lawyer." And that's my tidbit for this hour. We'll talk to you next hour. We're going to talk about Brad Pitt and Angelina getting sued. We'll be right back with Radio Law Talk.
Thanks, Olivia Scott from Pepperdine University School of Law.
Of constant sorrow, I've seen trouble all my day.
You have been listening to RadioLawTalk.com, a copyrighted presentation of Radio Law Talk Incorporated. Is a live copyrighted presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for RadioLawTalk.com with your host, Frederick Penny, attorney at law. And now, RadioLawTalk.com.
Hello, everybody. This is Frederick Penny, Radio Law Talk host. I can't wait to talk about the 10 principles of Burning Man coming up the next hour. Let me give you a quick disclosure. Remember, we're talking about general legal principles. Seek an attorney for all your legal needs. If you want to call in and talk to us, write this down, 855, again, 1-855-LAW-RADIO, or tweet us at Radio Law Talk.
That's right.
And again, we're in our second hour. The first hour we had a lot of fun, and we want to also thank
Olivia Scott from Pepperdine University School of Law, who has done an amazing job of doing our research for our program today. And Olivia, we have a signed Radio Law Talk mug for you, and we really have appreciated you.
that is worth absolutely nothing. With our signatures on it, you think it'd be worth something, but this is worth nothing.
Olivia, we promised, and we did good this time. We did not
Did
sign.
well.
We
Very poor
What?
English.
We did good. Food goes in here.
We did good.
We promised not to, and we didn't sign the inside of the mug this time, so that you could actually use it.
I thought you were saving that space for my signature.
Okay, perhaps I spoke too soon.
We actually got Cal's signature on here. It's just an X.
Cal is going to fill the mug with some product that he picked up for you in Lake Shasta this morning.
Like just, you know what? There's certain hosts out there that are just a little bit bigger than us that always talk about Rio Linda and make fun of Rio Linda. Is Lake Shasta going to be our place? Because I think the Lake Shasta people are probably awesome people out there because they're probably listening to us live. But what town are we going to use, or are we not going to use one?
I grew up in the town of Winters. You're free to use it. You're free to use it. I'd like to give a shout out. We got a lot of listeners in Winters. I think we got about 5,000 people in the town, and I would say probably, 10% or so are regular listeners to Radio Law Talk. It might be our biggest group of listeners are in this little town of Winters.
You know, way back in the day, back when video stores were profitable, even before Blockbuster came in, I worked for a video store.
Block what?
Yes, exactly. I worked for a video store up in Yuba City. They had one store in Yuba City, one store in Marysville, and for Lord only knows what reason why, they also had a satellite store in Winters. Sundance Video in Winters. I guarantee it's not there now.
Absolutely, Sundance Video. My little brother used to hang out in Sundance Video all the time, and in fact, our family got very concerned about him because he was spending all his time at Sundance Video.
And I worked for the owner there. I still can't figure out what market research they did that made them think that Winters was going to be this hub of activity. But hey, it stayed open for a long time.
You know why? More late fees in Winters than anywhere else. I still owe late fees to Sundance Video.
Okay, all right.
The Rodriguez family.
My two big liabilities are student loans and late fees to Sundance Video.
That's why you couldn't qualify for a loan for your house, right?
But I still
do
have White Men Can't Jump in my DVD collection. So take that.
DVD or the 8-track tape?
VHS.
I do have some VHS.
Do you have any Betamax? No, okay.
Is this the place, Chris? Is Winters? Is this the place where there's no more newspaper boxes because someone stole them all back in the 80s?
No, that was
90s?
Davis.
Hey, let's not relive the past. Let's move forward. We're forward-thinking.
So those of you who are first listening to us, Chris laid out some of his past indiscretions, and they're really bright ones. And I want to bring it up again. Very bright things that you did when you were younger, and that's probably why you went to Harvard afterwards. Is that right?
Well, have you guys ever had a BB gun fight?
Yes.
Yes, I have many times. But at least I wore the goggles.
Oh, did you?
Did you wear goggles?
No, we kept it real in Winters. How are you going to have a BB gun fight with goggles? I mean, what's the fun of that?
Oh, no, I was wondering where all those pock marks on your arms were.
Anyway, shout out to the people of Winters. Also, I want to give a quick shout out because I've seen him walking down the hall. Glenn Bear, one of my favorite humans of all time. So, Glenn, if you're listening, hopefully you're listening over there. Good to see you.
And I'd like to shout out to Heidi and Dave Trant. They're from Louisiana, and there's a following of listeners there as well.
Wow. Todd, you and I don't have any followers, do we?
We don't.
Nobody likes us.
Given the number of restraining orders I have, restraining me from being within 100 yards of people, I mean, it's only a matter of time before I'm not even able to do this show. So.
What's nice about that is you can represent yourself.
Exactly. Although, what did Mark Twain say? Anybody who represents themselves has a fool for a client.
A lawyer who represents themselves has a fool for a client.
You can sit next to me anytime. I don't care what that restraining order says.
Okay, all right.
With pants or without, Todd. You're more
You
than
got an
welcome.
exception there. Peaceful contacts related to Radio Law Talk.
You know what's interesting?
I am wearing pants, by the way.
You know what's interesting is Denise always comes dressed nice. Chris Rodriguez and I, we always have shorts on. Stand up, Chris. Just for the look at this. See, we just wear shorts. Yeah, you wearing shorts too? Oh, your shorts are pretty nice today.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, no, really, stand up, Chris.
Seriously.
Can we talk the law? Everybody's others like, oh, why don't we talk some law? Let's talk about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. They have a beautiful place. Where is it located?
France.
It's exactly France. And it is like they put in like $29 million into this project in France, these houses and these bungalows. And apparently the big issue was, and just so you know, I don't get this. And I'm going to say right up front, I don't get this. It's an issue about lighting. A lighting project at the Chateau Miraval. What is a lighting project? I mean, it's like, do they just put the light bulbs in or what?
Well, it's an old chateau, right? And they're trying to probably update it.
I get it.
And so they had to do a lot of renovation for lighting, electricity, all of that. And to create the right aesthetic, you want to have lightings that are going to, feature the prominent parts of the chateau.
Okay, let me tell you, the people in Winters would not spend $29 million on lighting.
Proudly so.
That's exactly
I would say most of our listeners, lighting is, do you want to have the light switch where you flip it up and down, or do you want to have the one where you kind of...
Dial.
Dial, even that's getting a little
Or
fancy.
just the Bic.
Or yeah. You got a light on your phone. I got a light on my flip phone.
That's exactly right. So, but anyway, they're spending $29 million, and supposedly Brad wrote this little nice, schematic of what he wants to do with his lighting in his chateau. And now, can anybody say Odile Soudat? Is that Soudat? I don't even know how to pronounce this person name. Is the designer that they hired to come in.
Soudat.
Yeah, Soudat, the interior designer to help design this thing. And it all comes down to, and this happened in Paris, in France. I think it was in Paris, but it was in France. This lawsuit, it was in Paris. It was in a Paris court. And they sue because Brad and Jolie did not pay. This person sued the interior designer. They didn't pay their $600,000 that they owed an additional $600,000, and he wins. Okay.
Well, so and part of that suit.
I'm sorry, he. It's a she. She wins.
It is a she.
It's a she.
And part of that suit, she got $70,000 for damaging her reputation because Brad Pitt put out there that he was really responsible for the design, and that is a damage to her reputation. She's the one that says, this is my design. I'm the one that came up with the design. I own the design, even though I was paid by Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. It's my design.
And I think what we have here is two different suits. The one suit was for failure to pay.
That's exactly right.
And
which they won.
And damage to reputation.
Well, the second suit was brought after the failure to pay, where she's alleging the damage to reputation.
No, copyright and the intellectual property. There's two different suits. The first suit was to
listen
recover.
to the women. She's smarter than us, Todd. Would you
be?
Doggone it, Todd. You know she knows what she knows. Well, we're going to get back to this in a minute because we're about out of time, but we're going to listen to Denise because she's much smarter than the three of us combined. We'll be right back with Radio Law Talk.
This is no fun.
You're listening to RadioLawTalk.com. And now back to your host, Frederick Penny.
We're talking about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's lawsuit that they're getting sued by this designer in Paris. Here's a couple interesting things you have to understand. We're not talking about Paris law. We're actually, there's what did you say, Napoleonic law that we can talk about in a second here, but we're going to kind of apply this to the laws in the United States and generally how it works in the United States. So we're not talking Paris law because Chris Rodriguez and I were talking about, we were worried about the Paris bar coming after us for practicing law in Paris without a license.
Yes. Well, we don't want to offend any Parisian lawyers either.
I think we have several Parisian lawyers in our listenership, so we have to be very careful about that.
10, 20,000 of them, I think.
I would think.
So here, the Visual Artists' Rights Act. Denise, what's the Visual Artists' Rights Act in the United States about?
Well, it's about artist rights to
Yeah,
intellectual property.
If only the title of the act had anything to do with what. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the artist is the originator of their artistry, and anybody that tries to claim their art as their own is really damaging their reputation.
Right.
Because that's their intellectual property, is their art. And that is what they do, that is their craft, and that is their property rights.
Right, and so and a person can bring a lawsuit under 15 USCA section 1125. Seth, that's something good and exciting to throw up because Cal's falling asleep there at the wheel because
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Bitcoin.
Oh, Lord, help us all.
All I got to say, and this is what this says: any person who, or in connection with any goods or services, uses in commerce any false designation or origin, false or misleading description of a fact, is likely to cause confusion, and they're damaged by it, can bring a lawsuit. So basically, that's what's happening here, and she's claiming her studio or her design company went bankrupt. And she's trying to claim now they bankrupted her.
Yeah, they forced her into bankruptcy because they didn't pay her, first of all. And then secondly, they're trying to claim that Brad Pitt said it was his brainchild, the design was his brainchild, and that damaged her reputation.
Yeah, and he's saying that because why? They said he has
actual hand drawings of designs that he says are the original.
Right.
But who created the actual design?
Well, I have a question for you on that, about just this Artists' Rights Act in general. Okay, so I get that if an artist creates a work of art and it's in a museum and then somebody takes that and says it's their own and they use it without the proper attribution and all of that. But what if an artist is commissioned or hired to do a project for a company? And they're compensated for it. Like an easy example would be when I did the logo for my law office, I hired an artist to come up with the little logo and I paid them for it. And I own it.
Right.
They have no claim to this because I own it. I paid them for it and it is mine. Does that apply if there is compensation paid for the amount that was taken, or for the art that was created?
Well, typically there's going to be a contract. So presumably when you hired the person who did the logo for your firm, there was a contract that said, I am going to charge you a fee, and any ideas that you may give me during the process, I can use as I continue my business, and the logo is going to be yours to use, and I can't use it as the designer without your permission, and all that's laid out in the contract. So that's why people have contracts, is to answer some of these difficult questions. Where you get into trouble is where you don't have a contract that lays all of that stuff out, and then you have to let the law figure it out.
Well, also you have to remember that even when you have a house that's being built, or there's a monument or something's built, the architect gets credit. I mean, he doesn't own that building, but he does get credit for that design. And I think that's more the idea that we're talking about. Even though he got paid to do what he did, he still gets credit for that design.
He or she.
Okay.
Yeah, in this case, neither party is alleging a valid copyright. So a copyright is something that you've actually sent in and gone through the process, but what they're arguing is who is the true artist or creator of this, and that's what the judge has to decide. And what I'm thinking, she should ask for $417 million and say talcum powder somehow was involved. And I think that's the way to go with the suit. So if they came into my office, let's figure out how we can get talcum powder. Did Brad Pitt use it in the bathroom that you were, and you got it on you or something like that? Because I'm sure in France they're probably using talcum powder from the 40s, 50s,
It's
and
for
60s.
the squeaky floor.
I'm sure there's some people in the jury in France that really wish that Angelina Jolie was regularly using talcum powder. Because I promise you, the people in France that are sitting on this jury, they don't... Whose side are you going to be on? The poor designer or the Pitts who just spent $29 million on a chateau?
If you saw Todd's react, Todd has his head down with his hand over, shaking his head, just wondering.
As the lawyer, this is something you have to think about. Is the jury going to like Brad and Angelina? I mean, they have 42 kids. That's true, but still,
42?
they spent $29 million on a mansion. That's not within the realm of
Which one
everyday
of them
living.
is being sued because they're divorced now, or they're
Both.
going through?
They're both being
both
being
Okay.
sued. Both.
Hey,
As
why
well
don't
they
you
should
guys? Why don't you call in and let us know what you think about this? 1-855-529-7234. 855 Law Radio. Give us a call and let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah, and maybe we can all get together and decide to direct ship some Johnson & Johnson talc over to the chateau.
You want to hear some other interesting facts about Brad Pitt? Let's just pass
Yes,
on Rodriguez.
yes,
let's
do.
go beyond Rodriguez here. Brad Pitt is such a fan of the French artist Jean Nouvel that his daughter's name, what is his daughter's name?
Shiloh.
Shiloh Novell. And this person they hired, this interior designer, was
Studied under
Jean
Nouvel.
Nouvel, and that's why
Jean
they
Nouvel.
and that's why they hired her, because they wanted to use that. Apparently, he exploits natural light somehow to make it really cool. I know how to exploit natural light. I just open my windows and the shades, and I open the door, and then the natural light comes through. If you want to pay me $29 million to show you how to do that, that's what we do where I live.
Yeah, PG&E.
Yeah.
PG&E. That's where I get my
Natural
lighting.
light?
My natural light is PG&E.
And Todd does it by taking his shirt off.
I do. Yeah, I could take my shirt off and illuminate an entire room. I mean, it's just solar be danged.
So we were talking about the difference between United States laws.
Oh, we got to go. We'll be back in a few minutes to talk more about, we're going to talk about Poland Springs bottled water.
You are listening to RadioLawTalk.com.
I would like to thank one of our sponsors. Iceberg Drive-In is a great sponsor of ours, and they are a, quote, fast food place. There's quite a few of them in Utah. There's some in California. And what they do is they have a great hamburger. The best thing they have is these onion rings. There's these giant onion rings, and that's their own breading, and they're just to die for. And then they're kind of famous for their milkshakes. They're like 2 or 3 inches higher than the actual lid, and you can literally turn the thing upside down, and it won't move. That's how thick they are. And the mini shake is the size of like an extra large shake. That's
Yeah.
a small shake you can get.
My kids love those shakes. They get them at Sunsplash
Yeah.
when they go to Sunsplash. And this summer, the last thing they did before they left the park was they got these iceberg shakes, and they're so huge. And my kids are, 10 to 13 in that range. They couldn't even finish them.
Right.
So then they leave their milkshakes just sitting on the seat. I take a turn.
Oh.
Next thing I know, I have iceberg milkshake all over my back seat. Not nearly as good when it's spread across your leather seat than it is when you're drinking it out of a
And
nice
they have
straw.
opportunities for franchises.
That's exactly right. That's what that commercial that was running, I was just listening to it during the break, is they're opening franchises throughout California and Arizona. But what a great opportunity. You can go to icebergdrivein.com and just email. I know the CEO president is a guy by the name of Reed Reinhold, but what a great restaurant. What a great place. Unfortunately, the food is way too good for my diet, but it is super. Oh, their fries and the fry sauce. Oh, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it right now.
Me
and they
too.
have one called a rodeo burger. Listen to this. The rodeo burger is, they take the bun. Listen, I'm just so hungry right now. I just ate a bar, by the way. And they fry the bun, they get it nice and toasty, good beef, and just the normal lettuce. And they have one of those big fat onion rings sitting on there, and they have this special barbecue sauce they put on it. Oh, and cheese. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's move on. Thank you very much, Iceberg Drive-In. I'm thinking about your burgers, your shakes, and your fries.
Fred has managed to turn a restaurant review into a quasi-Harlequin romance novel.
That is exactly what it is. Oh,
the
you have no
sauce, the
idea.
fries.
Turn the lights back on in there, will you?
The onion rings and the milkshake. Oh.
I would be, as again, a lot of you don't know out there, but that my co-hosts know, that I've been on a diet for a while, and oh my gosh, am I hungry sometimes, and I'm just thinking about an iceberg shake right now. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's talk about something that won't gain weight, that I won't gain weight on, and that's water.
Water.
So there's another class action suit going against Nestle, who owns what's called Poland Springs bottled water. It's out of Maine, and it's the whole issue is what's spring water, And the alleged lawsuit is stating that they are deceiving people through fraud, breach of contract, a violation of the FDA identity standards, saying that it is not natural spring water, that they're just pumping it out of a well and then just bottling it. In fact, they're claiming, these are the claims, the wells are near a bunch of places where they take care of, space the word. What's bathroom places? What do you call it? The sanitation.
Sewage treatment plants
and sanitation places. Yeah. Thanks, Cal. I just can't. Sometimes
we're talking about water here, right?
Water.
Okay, so regardless of the designation on water, we're still talking about the same chemical makeup. H2O, two molecules of hydrogen, one molecule of oxygen together, which is just water. 2/3 of the planet covered in it, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, but the issue here is, what's the proper label?
Right.
And are they getting it, if it's spring water, are they getting it from a spring?
Or is it, as alleged, that is coming from groundwater?
Now, if you notice, and I didn't know this until this summer, there is a distinction. You can go into a store and you can buy a 24-pack of bottled water, or you can buy a 24-pack of spring water. And I prefer spring water myself. If I have the choice, because I know bottled water is somebody, I always picture somebody sitting at a Motel 6 with a plastic bottle and just opening the tap and filling and putting the cap on and setting it aside. And so I, as a consumer, if I'm buying spring water, I want to know that it is coming from a spring and not from a tap.
Chris, here's what's interesting. Here are the different designations of water that you can have. Artesian water, you can call it artesian water, and they're all different. They have different designations and different rules. Groundwater, mineral water, purified water, which is also described as distilled water, deionized water, or reverse osmosis water. You can call it sparkling water, or spring water, or sterilized water, and finally well water. So you have to fit within one of those designations. And obviously, at least what I'm thinking, like you said, Chris, the one that's going to make the most money and the one that to me is most important, if I see spring water, I want to drink spring water. And so I think they use that to try to increase the price, and therefore this lawsuit that has been brought forth is a plaintiff that's alleging that he bought a few $100s worth of a few $100 more he spent for this bottled water that he thought was spring water. And if he knew it wasn't spring water, he would have not bought it and bought the cheaper stuff, right? So go ahead, Cal.
The aquifer that feeds a well is an underground spring. So who makes the definition of what is a spring? To me, that's another issue that's probably going to come up this
Well,
year.
it is.
Well,
Yes and no.
Yes.
there is a definition here
Right.
where it says that in order to be a spring water,
Right.
the water must continue to flow naturally to the surface of the earth through the spring's natural orifice. Yes, they use the word orifice in the definition.
But they do.
And so it's the orifice of Mother Earth that we are looking at, that the water, so if it goes from that and then into a well, then I guess they would argue
It's well
that
water.
now it's well water.
Unless
Right.
it's a
Right.
natural well, where it bubbles up from
Now
the
that's
ground.
true,
That's
Cal.
spring, though. That's still spring.
That's what I'm saying.
That becomes a spring. It has to be able to bubble up on its own without pumping it from a well. So
Exactly.
that's one of the criterion of determining that it's spring water.
And the other criteria is that you have to bore a hole and access it through that and collect the water through the bored hole.
And the water still has to be coming out naturally. Even if you take it out with a bored hole, it still has to pop out naturally somewhere or somehow. And some of the arguments is
Let's simplify this.
Yeah.
Let's simplify this. Okay? Well water is turning on the tap at Motel 6. Okay? Spring water
that's not well
is,
water.
That's not well
That's
water.
not well water.
Spring water is a naturally flowing, think about the nicest rafting trip you've ever been on in this nice crystal blue water. A man in a white robe is ladling it out of the body of water.
I'd rather have
and
a
putting
woman
it
in a white robe.
Or a woman in a white robe.
Yeah.
Or Mainly women in a white robe, sometimes man in a white robe.
Angelina Jolie in a white robe with a bottle of talcum powder next to her is dishing out water for Chris Rodriguez.
But no, Chris is thinking that bottled fresh spring water comes out of a ditch behind his house in Winters.
It does. It does. Absolutely. That's called agua fresca.
Let me tell you, I'm looking at all this, all right? I'm looking at all this, and I don't want to get too religious or anything like that, but I'm thinking, what if these regulations existed at the time where we have scriptural references to the I am the water of life, and then some bureaucrat from the government comes in, I don't know if you can say that. Are you distilled water or are you well water? Or is this natural spring water? Because quite frankly, eternity is not going to rest on the backs of groundwater. It's got to be...
Let's run that past legal and see what they say.
Yes. Oh, I don't know that you're yeah, you created the world, but I don't know if you can say this. So.
Yeah, it also goes in and says that to call it spring water, there shall be natural forces causing the water flow to the surface through a natural orifice. And the location of the spring also needs to be identified if you're going to call it spring water. Spring water is collected with the use of external forces shall be from the same underground stratum, whatever that means, as the spring, as shown by measurable hydraulic connections using hydrology valid methods.
Layer. Stratum is the layer, so you can't dig a hole beneath it and dig it out.
Right.
This is the best part of the law, and this is why I love the law. People have made these laws to protect consumers, right? I mean, you can't just say spring water if it doesn't come from what the law has defined as a spring. And now there are going to be people sitting in a courtroom somewhere, and there's going to be, getting back to expert testimony, there's going to be an expert and then on one side and an expert on the other that have gone out to where this Poland Springs bottled water is bottled, have analyzed the rock formations and the flows of water, and they will be testifying about that to 12 people who will determine whether or not this bottled water was bottled at a spring or not a spring. That is phenomenal.
We're going to continue talking about this and especially how it applies in Burning Man later on. We'll be right back. This is Frederick Penny, the host of Radio Law Talk.
Got to put the Burning Man out with something.
Tweet us, Radio Law Talk.
This is Frederick Penny. We're still talking about water. I don't know about you guys, but where I grew up, I'm not quite sure what to call the water. I'd call it mixed because we drink it out of the ditch sometimes, and I think there's a couple of cows and sheep that were hanging out in there. Who knows what's in that water? But let's read some interesting things that we're on the break. We're kind of checking out. So Dasani says purified water. Aquafina says pure water, perfect taste. But it's interesting that you look at all the different brands, and I never used to look at that. But I'm going to start looking at what it says on the label now, because to me, Alhambra, crystal fresh drinking water. What does that mean? Calistoga, mountain spring water.
I just want to point something out here right now, that earlier in this segment, Fred was talking about the food from that establishment with a lot more, how shall I put this, vigor or enthusiasm about French fries and milkshakes and passion. He had that a lot more than he is talking about water. Why is that, Fred?
Because water is what I drink all the time, and they make me drink. I have to drink 3 to 5 liters of water a day.
Oh, my gosh.
I think it's because water is regulated by both the federal and state governments.
That's exactly right. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And how do you say it, Avion or Avion?
Evian.
Evian. That's what they say it in Winters? Mm-hmm. What do the people at MIT call it?
Evian.
Or
water.
Evian.
Oh.
Right before they get their butt kicked.
Oh, okay.
Them's fighting words.
Natural spring water, Evian.
Pardon me. Will you please pass the Evian?
Evian.
Would you like to light my chateau?
Crystal Geyser, alpine spring water. What's the difference between spring water and alpine spring water? And we're talking about Fiji.
It's a source.
Fiji. I guess that's like, and you said it's not bottled, Chris?
Well, no. That's something I was talking. I was speculating.
Okay.
Mere speculation.
Mere speculation.
At the break.
Let's not say
there.
that then.
Yeah. I did say it's my favorite, though. I can say that.
Okay. Odwalla, natural spring water. So I guess the issue is from here on out. Yeah, I know it's driving everybody crazy to listen. From here on out, I'm going to look at this stuff. Let's all look at our spring water and see what's important. But like Denise was saying, there's a lot of different states that they're bringing these cases in, and it's New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. This case was based out of Connecticut. We're talking about Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and it's all about the water.
And
now,
it's another class action lawsuit, right?
Right.
Yes.
I'm still waiting for as Lionel Hutz from The Simpsons would say, I'm waiting for the class action lawsuit against the makers of the movie The Never-Ending Story for false advertising, because there was clearly an ending to the movie. And anybody who watched it was damaged by it.
We've actually talked about that on this show.
Uh-oh.
And how it was on The Simpsons.
Okay. Yes, it was.
The maker of the Never-Ending Story.
But yeah, here's something interesting about all of this with regard to water, okay? And to me, this is all about marketing, and I'll tell you why. Because as I may have mentioned earlier, it costs more for a gallon of water than it does a gallon of gas right now.
Wow, I know.
More for a gallon of water. The earth is covered in 2/3 of it, and it costs more for a gallon of water than it does for a gallon of gas. And do you know what they have to go through to get a gallon of gas? They got to find a place where they get this crude oil. They pump it out, and this is how they make it. All right? They start heating up crude oil, and at different temperatures, different parts of the crude oil start to evaporate. So when it gets to be somewhere between 70 and 120 degrees Celsius, the gasoline that we have on our pump starts to evaporate, and that's siphoned off, and that's our gasoline. When it gets up to be around 200 degrees, or 120 to 150, that's where we get kerosene from. Gas oil, or diesel fuel, is up around 200 degrees Celsius. Lubricating oil is about 220 degrees Celsius. Heavy gas oil is 600, and all of the products that we get from crude oil come from this heating process, and then taking whatever evaporates at certain temperatures. And you figure that's got to be an expensive process to get it shipped from wherever it is to get here, to get it down, and it's still only going for about $2.95 a gallon at the pump.
But water is a closed system. We have not found a way to create water.
Well, we haven't found a way to create water. We haven't found a way to create crude oil either. We just have to find it wherever it is. And we refine it.
Is it a closed system, though?
Well, we refine it to the situation that it is. My point is, it costs a lot more in terms of out-of-pocket expenses for companies to create gasoline in all the man hours that it takes from wherever it is to bring it in than it does to set up a pump by a well or a spring to get the water out of the spring, or even to create the purified water, which is just boiled at a certain temperature, and you go through the purification process. I think you were pointing out, Denise, that there's requirements that they have to put if water comes from a community system, right?
Right.
But they don't have to put that on the label if it's purified water or sterilized water, because it goes through a process of purification.
Right.
There's a lot more water out there than there is oil, but the price for water is more than oil.
When it first came out, when they first started coming out with water, does anybody know? Do you remember when that first started happening? They were selling bottled water that was not the distilled water. I remember my dad getting the distilled water for our batteries, and you have to buy distilled water to put in your batteries. But I remember
in your fish tanks,
yeah,
and those type of things.
But
right?
when water first came out, I remember laughing, going, "Hey, where I grew up, we drink it wherever it is." I that hose. That had so many germs around the edge of the hose from my lips, my brothers, and my mom's and my dad's. We sucked it right out of the hose. But guess what? I did grow up on a ranch, and I remember them drilling that well. And that's interesting. Have you ever watched a well drill? And as they went down, the water started kind of coming out, drizzling, and all of a sudden it was about 150 feet, and all of a sudden just boom, just like you see on the movies, the water just blew up. And they said it was an underground. They can tell by how the drill goes down that we hit an underground, not a spring, but it was a river. And then we noticed all the way up the line, all the neighbors started drilling the same area because we're developing this big area, and all of us were getting 5 to 10 acre parcels. And all of a sudden, same thing, boom, 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 and it was an underground river we hit. Now, is that a natural spring? I don't know. Do you call it natural river water? I don't know what you call it.
But it's interesting to think, Todd, when you talk about gasoline, that most of that price in California is taxes, and water isn't. So the margins in water have got to be great. It's got to be making money hand over fist.
Oh, yeah.
Statistically now, water has surpassed soda pop in sales. It's over $70 billion in sales of water now, or more than that. It probably changes every month, but it has now exceeded soda pop.
Well, and you get to what has created the demand for water, because you compare it to what Fred was talking about back in the day. I remember going to soccer practice when I was in high school, and they'd hook up a hose to a piece of PVC pipe that was about 10, 15 feet long with holes drilled on either side. They'd turn it on in this little fountain, and everybody'd stick their head down and try to get as much water as they could in that 10-minute break that the coach gave you, and it's just coming right out of the tap. So what has created this demand from what we experienced back in the 70s and the 80s, where you just drinking it out of the faucet, to now paying more for a gallon of water than you pay for a gallon of gas? It's because marketing has convinced us that, look, the water you get out of your tap isn't the good water that you want. You want Fiji water.
Natural spring.
You want the natural spring water. It's the designation, the I don't. As I'm smoking on my metaphorical cigarette for my health, I'm going to go ahead and drink the spring water. And it's amazing to see how this has come around.
But it has totally saturated our society. If I tried to give my 12-year-old daughter a glass of tap water, could you imagine the look on her face would be like I just tried to stab her with a knife.
Oh, that's a CPS call for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy where our society has come. You have to drink bottled water.
Same thing. My daughter tried to tell me that she was going to die of dehydration because there was no water in the house. Now, I've got a filter on my refrigerator that filters the water that comes out that tastes great. We live in an area where even the tap water tastes great.
Right.
But if it's not Dasani sitting in my fridge, death over tap.
But there are some places where you do have to have bottled water. Like I have an office in San Jose, and you can't drink that tap water. People do there. They've grown up there and live with it, but I can't drink that tap water. I have to filter it.
So we're going to wrap up this segment about bottled water. Everything about bottled water and the lawsuit against Nestle. Come back and listen to our third hour. We're going to talk about Burning Man in detail, and we're going to talk about why water is needed out in Burning Man. Call us.
Thanks to Olivia Scott from Pepperdine University School of Law.
We'll be right back.
And thanks to all of you for listening to us right here on RadioLawTalk.com.
You have been listening to RadioLawTalk.com, a copyrighted presentation of Radio Law Talk Incorporated. Is a live copyrighted presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for RadioLawTalk.com with your host, Frederick Penny, attorney at law. And now, RadioLawTalk.com.
When you're tired of politics radio, land right here at RadioLawTalk.com. I'm here with my lovely co-host Denise Dirks to my right, and my other co-host Todd Cunin to the left.
Note, I don't get the moniker lovely.
Of course not lovely. And we've got Cal Hunter behind the glass. He's our producer, and thanks Seth Madden, our call screener. Remember, we're talking about general principles of law. Seek an attorney for all your legal needs. Welcome, K-High listeners, live. We're going to talk about the most exciting thing of this 3-hour show. Those of you who don't know, we're a 3-hour show. We go 9 to noon, California time, and we have radio stations popping in and out, but it's always replayed, and we have it on podcast on www.radiolawtalk.com, and then you can call us
at 855-LAW-RADIO. That's 1-855-529-7234.
And we're going to talk all about Burning Man. This has been the anticipated discussion Those of you who listen live from our website, this is hour 3. And man alive, everyone wants to talk about this. There are a lot of exciting things about Burning Man that you're going to learn. The most important thing you're going to learn is what to do and not to do, the legal issues of Burning Man out in Nevada. And I'm telling you, listen to the statistics from 2015, just a couple of statistics. There are 70,000 paid participants, 9,000 workers, total population of 79,000 as of 2015. Total police officers 192, which are sheriffs and Bureau of Land Management. In 2015, the total arrests were 41 arrests, and we'll break those down on what the arrests were and talk about them. Total citations, over 600 citations. Traffic, and that's not, now talk about traffic citation. This is from the Highway Patrol in Northern Nevada area. And this is actually, as of February 9th, 2015, the number of stops were 245, 119 citations, 111 warnings, 12 crashes. Boy, I'd like to be a personal injury lawyer on those crashes. I wonder how that works out. And what was crashing. Who knows what was crashing? Speed citations 62, seatbelt violations 2, DUI arrests 7, that's Todd's wheelhouse. Drug arrests 0, commercial vehicle inspections 21. Todd is a criminal lawyer, former prosecutor for the district attorney's office, has his own practice. Denise Dirks is a family law attorney, and I, Frederick Penny, am a personal injury lawyer doing personal injury throughout the state of California, and I handle mass torts. I am also barred in the state of Washington, D.C. Well, state. Oh, excuse me. It is not a state. I am barred in Washington, D.C.
Let's clarify. By barred,
barred.
he means he's bar certified, not barred from entering.
Yeah, not barred from entering. I have a bar license, and that's not drinking bar in Washington, D.C. So anyway, we're here to talk about Burning Man.
And for those of you that joined us the last 2 hours, we have taken away Chris Rodriguez's mic because he was really questioning his sexual orientation. We thought we'd let him get to it, and he's not with us.
Those of you who weren't here the first 2 hours, that was half the fun. Was Chris Rodriguez and Chris? It was this. If you guys, we do have a YouTube channel, Radio Law Talk, but we're not doing it live. We just replay it there. And if you could see the faces on the three of us every time Rodriguez talks, he's gone because he said, "Oh, I have my fantasy football thing going on. I can't miss that. I have to miss the third hour." Move on, Chris, because your paycheck's going to be cut, right?
Right.
And he's going to get from 0 to 0 money. And so, but the face on Todd's face most of the time when Chris was talking was hand on forehead, head down, and head shaking.
Yeah, but that's because he's trying to keep himself from joining in.
Yeah, well, I just... I know where the boundaries are. Sometimes what did I hear? You want to camp on the right side of the boundary, but occasionally visit the other side. I didn't even want to go there this time. Just didn't even want to go there.
Hey, so do you guys know the 10 principles of Burning Man?
No, I don't. What are the 10? Just we'll talk detail, but what are they?
Well, it's radical inclusion, the idea that everyone belongs, and there's no stranger. And respect the stranger at the same time. There's gifting, so there's an encouragement to give things that are important to you to others. Decommodification, boy, that's a hard word. Again, that's in order to preserve the spirit of gifting. The community seeks to create social environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorships, transactions, or advertising. They're really trying to get back to the core. And radical self-reliance is also one of the concepts.
I got to teach my kids that.
Yes, you do. And radical self-expression, communal effort, civic responsibility, and leaving no trace. They call that MOOP. That's where anything that is in the desert can stay in the desert, but things that are brought in the desert that don't belong have to be removed from it.
Have you ever heard of that race called the Eco Challenge?
Yes.
Okay, where they go and you guys, this long distance that you have to traverse over a couple of days, and that's one of the principles of the Eco Challenge is nothing left behind. So if you have any bodily movements that you have, bowel movements, anything, you can't leave it out there. You have to take it with you through the whole thing. Everything you bring in, you've got to take out. And it's part of that race, and it's a principle here for Burning Man.
Yeah. And participation is another principle, and immediacy. And that's where you can experience cultural events and participate.
Well, let's talk about when it is. Does anybody know when this thing is? It starts, is it this coming Sunday?
Yeah, it starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
And it goes all the way until the following Monday, so it's September 4th.
Yeah, so 8/27/2017 it starts. That's tomorrow.
I think the way they set it, the way they talk about the time frames is it always begins on the last Sunday of August, and it goes through the first Monday of September.
Right,
So-
and there is a price to get in, $425 to get in, and a vehicle pass is $80.
Now, $425 to get in, Fred. How many people did you say were paid attendees?
70,000.
Okay, we're
Okay,
going to
calculate it.
$29,750,000 in entrance fees. If the numbers are correct, at 70,000 people paid $425 a pop to get in.
In this non-commercial event.
Right, and this is a non-commercial event. And by the way,
Right.
parking vehicle pass, $80. So I don't know how many vehicles are there, but there you go. You're millions and millions of dollars generated here. And the interesting thing is I'm not here to harp on Burning Man because we're going to say the pros and the cons, and we're going to laugh about it and cry about it. But doggone it, I thought they weren't supposed to make money, and maybe they're not making money because they became an LLC. It started in San Francisco. They became an LLC, then changed to a non-profit organization.
That's right, in 2014.
That's exactly right. So, but the interesting thing is, as you go out there, there's a little side Burning Man group that we'll talk about also called
White Ocean.
White Ocean. What's White Ocean?
White Ocean is like you said, it's a side group of people that have gone to Burning Man and sort of set up their own little subculture within Burning Man. They have principles of White Ocean. We just went over the general principles of Burning Man. Now, those are the 10 principles as espoused by the creators of Burning Man that's followed by Burning Man. White Ocean has their principles that are supposed to be a subset. Some of them are similar or nearly identical to Burning Man, but they have others that do differ. We won't get into all of those, but there has been some friction there. And I'm sure that we're going to get into that friction. We're also going to get into the fact that Burning Man is not immune from lawsuits.
That's exactly right. There is lawsuits, and there are certain laws you got to follow, and we're going to talk about those laws that you need to follow if you go out to Burning Man. We'll be right back talking more about Burning Man right after this. I'm Frederick Penny.
Tweet us, Radio Law Talk.
All right, we're on. I'm texting my wife. Tell her that I want to hurry up, and after Radio Law Talk's done, I want to go watch some football. It's football season, and I like college football.
Do they allow football at Burning Man?
I'm sure there's a lot of football being played out there in Burning Man.
Hey, Cal, are you heading up to Reno or to
Burning Man?
Nevada?
No.
But that was should I tell them or not? Should I tell them or not?
I told you a good friend of mine's daughter goes up to Burning Man every year. And I said, have you looked at any of the pictures of Burning Man? And he said, I don't want to go there. I just hope she has a good time.
There you go. Boy,
I said, she is, I'm sure.
I wish my dad would have told me that. Hey, just so you know, Burning Man's in northern Nevada. It's about 2 hours north of Reno in a place called Black Rock Desert, which is basically an old riverbed, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or not riverbed, a lake bed.
A dried up lake.
And Denise, you're telling me they almost didn't.
They almost didn't have Burning Man this year because it flooded. This lake flooded, and they didn't get their permit until the end of July 31st. They finally got their permit. So they didn't know that it was actually going to happen this year. And another really fun fact is that the Burning Man that's going to be burnt this time, he's made out of completely recycled wood that came from part of the floods, and wood that came from diseased trees from California, and they were trucked there. And this new creative Burning Man figure that's going to burn is made from recycled wood.
Well, I got a question for you. You talked about that this is in a lake bed. Do you know if this is on federal land or if this is on state land, because I noticed that when they talked about the number of law enforcement officers that were there, I think there was like 192, 150 of the law enforcement
BLM.
officers were from Bureau of Land Management.
Right?
Yes.
It's federal dirt.
It's federal
BLM.
dirt. It's BLM, Bureau of Land Management property.
So from a liability standpoint for criminal offenses, that changes things a little versus whether or not somebody would be prosecuted in the jurisdiction of Washoe County versus being prosecuted federally for offenses that are occurring on federal land. So
That is an interesting dichotomy. I didn't really think about that.
that's going to, because nobody wants to face criminal liability, but I can tell you as a matter of practice, if you had to face criminal liability somewhere, you'd want to face it in a state court, not federal court, because the federal system is much harsher. Much harsher. And so any of these offenses that Fred was talking about might carry stiffer penalties if they're prosecuted federally versus in state of Nevada.
Let's go over a little bit about the facts or about the history of Burning Man before we get into the law that we want to tell you about, to be careful if you're heading out there. And the first thing you got to understand is this didn't start in Nevada. I always thought it started in Nevada. It's basically an experiment in community and art influenced by all these principles that we discussed. But it started in 1986. And was first held at Baker Beach in San Francisco. And it was a small little function organized by a guy by the name of Larry Harvey and a group of his friends. And it was held annually. And it's always, like you said, it starts from the last Sunday in August to the first Monday in September. And so basically, like 2016, it was held August 28th through September 5th, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what's important is to remember, as they come out and hang out at Burning Man, there's so many different things that you can and can't do, and that's what we're here to talk about. And the first thing we got to talk about is the simple ones, and we're going to go through the very simple ones. That's duh. No possession of illicit drugs or drug paraphernalia. Remember, if you bring any drugs, there's a number or variety of things that could happen to you depending upon what you do with the drugs, or if you distribute it, or how much you distribute. Because there's evidence of intent to distribute. Am I correct? That is, intent to distribute is you got the larger amount, and then there's the drug trafficking is if you give it basically to someone else, a substance to someone else that's illegal. It could be only one or two things, but if the larger volume, then it's intent to distribute. Is that correct?
When you have a lot, that is a very good indicator that somebody might be intending to distribute. But there are a couple of other things they would look for. For example, if they had a scale, a digital scale, you were in possession of a large amount and you had a digital scale with you, then they're going to say, well, clearly you're using the digital scale to measure an ounce, 2 ounces, a gram, whatever, to go ahead. If you were also in possession of materials commonly used for packaging. The last thing is, and my guess is somebody who was intending to distribute at Burning Man wouldn't go up with raw material and actually do the packaging there. They would probably have a lot of material, but it would already be pre-packaged for quick sale. So if somebody comes in and they've got all of these individual uses, then the argument would be, well, this isn't for you. You came here with all of this stuff intending to sell. And the last one would be if you had a big wad of cash because you sold stuff.
But here's the interesting thing now that now that marijuana is legalized in Nevada, my argument is, well, I was just distributing marijuana.
But not under federal law.
That's true.
Which is what you brought up.
That's true. But here's what I'm trying to say. Cal said that. That's why we had these marijuana issues, and Radio Law Talk had a discussion about this in the past. There's a conflict between the federal and the state law right now. Even Cal's correct. Even though we're sitting on BLM land, which is federal land, they can still argue it's within the state of Nevada. Go
but
ahead,
even
Tom.
if they were there with a large amount of marijuana and trying to argue that they were operating legally under the state law, they would have to show that they have a permit
right
to be able to distribute it. Now, here's the problem. It's a two-edged sword for them. If they have this bale of marijuana, for lack of a better term, and they have their permit for distributing, they're going to say, see, it's legal. I've got this permit. I can do it. And the state's going to say, all right, we're okay. But then you got the feds coming and going, well, then that is our prima facie evidence that you were intending to sell because you got your permit.
Hence, all the 160 BLM officers and only a few
Washoe County Sheriffs.
Because, hey, we can't really do much because it's a BLM land.
That's right.
So,
Right. So there are other things that are also illegal, and suggested too.
go ahead.
Okay, prescription drugs, they must be transported and kept in the bottle that you receive from the pharmacist. So it has to have your name on it, and it has to be in that original bottle from the pharmacist. You can't just carry in your prescriptions in a weak, pill box.
All right, we're going to continue talking about it right after the break. This is Frederick Penny, Radio Law Talk.
Go to the website, radiolawtalk.com. You can listen to the show there, and there's a lot of other good information, too. That's radiolawtalk.com.
I'm Frederick Penny with my co-hosts, Denise Dirks and Todd Cunin, talking about Burning Man. And then we talked briefly about Burning Man's legal issues that we need to talk about, what you should and shouldn't do while you're there. But Burning Man also has a spin-off that started not too long ago called White Ocean, and we're looking at the website. White Ocean has a few extra or little different values, but kind of same as Burning Man, and these are kind of rich Silicon Valley people that set up their own place. And Todd read and told us about some of the things that the Burning Man people did and came to their little tent area, their own private area, and did some funny things. But their values, what they do is they believe in value, creative cooperation and collaboration, seeking to overcome mental and emotional barriers, discovering, exercise, and rely on your inner resources, manifest radical self-expression through the unique act of gifting. That's what we do here, isn't it? This is all free stuff we're given. Foster environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorship. Yeah, right. How much does it cost to get in? $80 and
$425 to get in, $80 for parking,
Yeah.
no commercials, but hey, they're making almost $30 million.
Yeah, but how much does it really cost to go to Burning Man? If you add up all the things, your costumes, your food, your drinks that you carry in, your survival supplies, your camping equipment, your earplugs, all of this together, with toys, and you have to have a lot of costumes to go to the plaza. And
I need those.
they estimate the cost, the actual cost per person, at $23.48.
Okay.
So $2,348 average
Calculate
cost.
it.
Wow.
Let's calculate. How many? There's 70,000. Okay, I'm gonna get my calculator out. Let's see. Clear 70,000. 1, 2, 3 times how much? 2,000 what?
$2,348.
They're spending $164,360,000 to hang out at Burning Man. Woo!
That's a lot of man burning.
That is a lot of not being fostering environments that are commercial sponsorships.
Well, and one of the principles there for Burning Man was this idea about it was the decommodification.
Right.
Where it says the social environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorship, transactions, or advertising we're talking about. That gets back to the water stuff we were talking about a couple of segments ago, where you wonder if water would cost as much as it does in an era of no advertising and this is the better water than that water, blah, blah, blah. But it is interesting to see what happens there. And I think that's one of the things that really turned a lot of the Burning Man goers off to this White Ocean group. Because when you look at the principles of Burning Man, it's supposed to be this, this commune and people all no classifications. Everybody is accepted for who they are, and then you have this group that came in, that the techies from Silicon Valley or whatever,
2013
in 2013, and wanted to set up this subculture that seemed to just slap in the face of the original principles of Burning Man. They came up with their own principles. They had their own tent, the own areas. They even had more niceties that came in, and that just sort of got under the skin of other people. And this was the report.
Right.
So back in 2016, okay, the report from September 1st is that this is what happened. quote, a band of hooligans raided our camp. This is one of the White Ocean reporters saying, or White Ocean members saying, a band of hooligans raided our camp, stole from us, pulled and sliced all of our electrical lines.
Rodriguez. It was Rodriguez.
It probably was, as he was still looking for orientation. Lines, leaving us with no refrigeration, wasting our food, and glued our trailer door shut. Right now.
Wait a minute, that's the good one. That's the one I didn't think about.
Up to now, it's sounding like just a college prank.
Right.
Okay. Vandalized most of our camping infrastructure and dumped 200 gallons of potable water, flooding our camp. And so these people came in, and I just think that it's an interesting microcosm to me. And I want to stress that this is just my opinion here. I'm not, speaking for the group here or anything like that. But it's interesting to me that the best intentions of having a communal group such as this, starting back in 1986, at some point will lead to one part of the group trying to separate themselves from the other, and then the part that wasn't included in the separation taking action to take down the part that separated themselves. It just seems to be human nature that that's what happens.
Who the heck is getting this $30 million plus dollars? That's what I want to know. Where is that money going? I mean, it's a supposedly a nonprofit. Probably the executive directors are getting a fat salary. I don't know what's going on, but how do you?
Well, it's the people that are providing the services before they actually get there.
$30 million bucks?
Yeah.
No.
Oh yeah.
BLM's getting paid. I mean, there's
not $30 million. I bet not $30 million. So the question is, where's that $30+ million going? I don't know. I'm just questioning it because of someone's getting fat here. I don't care what anybody says. This Fred Penny opinion, someone's getting fat. I don't know who it is, but the money's going somewhere. But here, let's talk a little bit about the law still. That's what we're here to talk about. So the next issue is driving with an open container or under the influence of alcohol or DUI is illegal. That's an obvious. These are some of the obvious ones. Nevada's blood alcohol limit is 0.08 for drivers over 21 years of age or 0.02 for drivers under 21. So just don't drink and drive. Now, what I don't get and I don't know is that mean in this parking lot, I'm going to call it this massive parking lot. It's made up of grids. And if you want to go see it, just go online and look it up. It's like this massive grid of just parked vehicles and tents and stuff. And that grid, is it driving in that area drunk? I know there's a speed limit, and I read it somewhere. I think it was 5 miles per hour or something like that in that area. You've got to go slow. And just look at the dust. It's just the dust alone with people walking and driving around. How do you even breathe? Forget the alcohol issue. How do you breathe there? Do you go out there and sell masks? But you can't sell. You can barter masks.
You can barter.
What do you barter for?
My guess is someone just puts something over their face, whether it's a scarf or, if you think about it, how many people saw the movie Lawrence of Arabia? That part of the world, people didn't buy masks. They just put a scarf over their face to keep the dust out and to take care of that. But that's kind of what they have to do there at Burning Man.
Well, I think I know what we can find out. Cal, last year when you went, what did you use?
Just one of those gang do-rags, but I got a green one. You put it. By the way, there is a pie chart that shows where all the money goes.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Really?
Yeah, about $9 million of it goes to payroll, so that's about 26%. Contractors get about $4 million. Permits and fees, that's BLM and all that stuff, is about $3.8 million. Heavy equipment rental to set it up, that's 2 point some. Payroll and taxes, building, office and expenses is 2. Occupancy is about 1.7. Ticket services, blah, 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 all the way up to royalties. So they break it all out and claim. The only one that I had a little suspicion about was the royalties. And I think that was
how much?
Wasn't a lot of money. It was let's see, $75,000.
Guess what though? Forget the royalties. Payroll. Who's on the payroll, Cal? Who's on the payroll, Denise? Who's on the payroll, Todd?
Well,
that's the question.
There was the announcement, or when Denise was going over the statistics, there were 7,000 paid attendees, 70,000 paid employees, or paid attendees, and 9,000 employees were there.
Right.
But not all employees are created equal in terms of what they're paid. So the producer, the organizer of the event, everybody else could be paid. What was the figure for payroll, Cal?
$9 million.
$9.5 million.
$9.5 million, and maybe they're paying all of the scrub workers
$10 an hour.
combined $2 million. Well, who gets the other $7 million?
Executives. The
Exactly.
executives.
Here's what they said. In 2015, they brought in 36 million change, spent 35 million in change. The difference is 1,557. Money doesn't benefit private interests or individuals, including board members. It goes to the organization and is reinvested.
Oh,
Well, that would make sense. That would make sense.
But that's broad, reinvested. And I don't care what you say, but if you look at corporations and businesses,
Somebody's getting paid.
Yeah, someone gets a higher salary for doing this. And
Well, I wonder how much the permit is, because they have to.
Well, they said it
get
was
the permit.
so many millions to the
Yeah,
BLM.
2.8 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so driving with an open container, serving alcohol to minors, no. That's another thing you got to be careful of. This is what we're talking about, the law. Assault or theft is a violation of the law. Duh. Okay. Finally, possession of a firearm. This is the interesting thing: possession of a firearm. Even if you have your card, if they tell you can't, if you have a CCW card, you can't possess a firearm.
And you can't spill or leak gray water, black water, oil, or fuel either.
Let's talk more about this right after the break. I'm Frederick Penny. This is Radio Law Talk.
Show me the money.
All this great law talk, and think of it, it doesn't cost you a penny. Now, back to the show.
Good one. Good pun, Cal. We're talking about Burning Man really quick. We got a lot to go over, and we only have a short time. Dumping, leaking, or spilling gray water is illegal, or fuel. Use of drones, manned or unmanned. Listen.
Unless they're registered. You can
I was
register.
going to say, don't use them unless they're registered. And then you got to follow those rules, whatever they have. You got to only go so high and all that stuff. But I don't know what those rules are at this point, but make sure you follow those rules. Human waste, urination, defecation, don't do it.
In the plaza. Or in the playa. Not plaza, it's a playa.
In the playa, an interesting thing about the playa. Okay,
You can do it, but just do it the right place.
I just got this in from a listener who heard earlier in the show when I was talking about trying to make my own sunscreen, and she has attended Burning Man several times, and she says that for her, the way she makes sunscreen is to do what's called playa angels. Now, you know what a snow angel is, where you lay down in the snow and you move your legs and your arms back and forth. Well, she would do that, lay down, make a playa angel on her back, then go on her front and do the same thing, and the dust from the playa would stick to her body, and that provided a natural sunscreen. A lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he hid from the Predator and had mud all over his body so the Predator couldn't see his body heat. That's the principle that she used, and she says, playa giveth and taketh away.
Now, that's a confusing mental image, isn't it?
No, that looks good. That's why they're all. That's right. That's why they're all got dust on them. You're not going to get sunburned. That's actually kind of smart. I think it's brilliant.
And
It's natural.
And you could actually then go ahead and get your fingers wet a little bit and make little designs. And then when you wash everything off, you've got a nice little sunburn tattoo.
Oh, I got you. That's good. Something like Fred on the top.
Yes, that would.
You know what? Did you know that a visitor actually sued? The one suit I know about was in 2015. Event, a guy was burned and tried to sue Burning Man in San Francisco County Superior Court, and a summary judgment was upheld, which is the judge threw it out basically before it even got to the jury, that he basically said visitors who deliberately walk towards the Burning Man after it's lit assumes the risk. Hey, that thing's burning. I'm going to head on up there and touch it. And
so
I'm
going
to sue.
Now let me get this straight. He tried to sue because he got burned, because when they lit the Burning Man, he walked up to it
and got burned. Yes.
Well, where was the warning label that fire burns? Or is that just common sense?
No, maybe that's what Johnson & Johnson's saying, huh?
Yeah, there was no talc.
That's exactly right, talcum. Let's go over some stats. We got some interesting stats. Now, here's some stats about what's going on out there. Did you know at Burning Man, as of 2016, the average median household income of a person out there, this is what I'm thinking, $12 an hour person. Average median income, $94,200. years.
You know, when you think about Burning Man, and people try to say it's like Woodstock now, and you look at Woodstock back then was, low income and people just out there to have a good time, and you look at Burning Man, boy, it is a starkly different demographic, isn't it?
Right. Interesting things.
And they're highly educated.
Yes.
They're highly educated. The vast majority have at least a bachelor's degree, and a lot of them have further higher education and graduate degrees.
Now there was a census that they did, and a lot of these stats are coming from the census. And I'm looking at one here, okay, and it says percent virgins. All right, percent virgins. And just reading it the way it looks, it appears that they have virgins, and then they have these other stats for those that have 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it looks
What
like
years?
it's saying that
What
in
years?
2016, 39.3% were virgins.
Yeah, but as Chris Rodriguez pointed out too, that means of attendance. It's the first time they attended, and it's not the amount of partners that they've had, it's how many times they've attended.
I thought we were back on the orientation thing again.
It's just a misleading statistic. They could have said first-time attendees, but they say and I was thinking, well, what difference would that?
Well,
I mean,
And
You're
who's
thinking we
writing
have-
that down?
We have all these tech people out there that are still virgins, right?
well, and it would make sense if most of the people are tech guys going, because there's more men than women that go.
That's true.
And 39.3%. Sure, okay, I get it.
Guess what the median age is? 34. The median age 34. And that kind of sounds right. Median age is 34.
Median age is 34, but still, when you look at that, 30.7% or 32% rather in 2016 were 40 plus.
And the questions they ask are funny, like the relationship status. They ask, do you consider yourself married? Not, are you married or not? Do you consider yourself married?
I would like the other. Does your potential partner consider you married?
The vast majority of the people do not consider themselves married, almost 70%. And in the default world, do you share your life with a partner? And the vast majority of the people that go do not.
Well, I tell you right now, after going to Burning Man and the White Ocean, I think you may not be married after that.
That could be. That could be. In terms of well, and this was it's too bad Chris isn't here. They have the sexual attraction and orientation. In 2016, 66.4 were reported, claimed to be heterosexual. And then the numbers drop off, 7.8, gay or lesbian. Interesting, they have a stat here, refused labels as to what their orientation were, 3.9%. That was higher than the 0.4% who claimed to be asexual.
Oh, interesting.
So you have the heterosexual the highest. The next highest figure were those that claimed to be bi-curious at 11.7%.
It's interesting. What about residents? 51.9% were from California. Guess what the next highest residency was? I was shocked. New York.
I thought it would be New York,
Yeah.
really.
No, really? I would think
I did.
Nevada. What about Nevada? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, New York. It's New York, 5.9. Nevada is like fourth.
Where's Utah?
At 6.6.
Oh, wait. No, it's not going in percentage line.
That's 2013. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
2016 is 48.5% California. New York still. Oh no, you're right. No. That's still New York, 8.1.
Yes.
And then Washington is 6.3 and Nevada 5.7. I don't see Arizona's got quite a few, 1.8.
So
Illinois.
So this is a ranking of the 50 states, the top 11 states in terms of attendees. California's coming in through 13, 14, 15, and 2016 at pretty near 50%, 51 to 49. Utah has maintained 11th place.
Wow.
Cal.
Just curious.
At 1.5%.
And they're all tech heavy. The top are all tech heavy states. Did you see? Washington
Right.
for Microsoft and
Right.
Silicon Valley. So that's interesting.
Here's a very interesting one. Religion and spirituality. This is the interesting thing. Religious. Are you religious? This is what they ask. 6.3% say they're religious. That's low. Now, spiritual but not religious, whatever that means, 49.2%. Ready for this? Atheist, 21.9. You Bible belters. Interesting. This agnostic, 15.05. I don't know. 6.3. Those are the people that are still trying to figure out how to weigh things out, and dancing around. I don't know. But that's interesting. 49.2% say they're not religious but spiritual, and ones that say they're religious are only 6.3. Amazing stat.
And what are the reasons that you attend? The reasons that you attend, the highest reason that you would attend in 2016 was to experience the art, because it is artistic expression, both personal and also by trade. That was the number one category to see it. After that, to be with friends or like-minded people and to feel a sense of belonging. This is a communal situation.
Yeah, you can get that, can't you?
Yes.
In a related statistic, I think the same survey had the same people saying that they also subscribe to Playboy magazine for the articles.
And then the next one is to play and experience freedom. Now that's I get.
No, that is what Radio Law Talk is. The percentage of people that listen to Radio Law Talk and then sit here with Radio Law Talk want to play and what?
Experience freedom.
And that's what
all
it's
American.
all about. That's us. That's freedom.
American.
So,
and then the next one after that, 28.8, is to escape the world for a time.
You know what? I say that's a good idea. I'm good with that.
I'm down with that.
You know what? It's been 3 hours. It blows by. We talked a lot about Burning Man. We hope you had fun listening to us. We hope you join us next week. Remember, call us at 1-855-LAW-RADIO. Go to our website at radiolawtalk.com.
And thanks to Olivia Scott from Pepperdine University School of Law. She's the one that did all the research for our program, and we really thank her.
Olivia, you rock.
See ya next week.
I'm going on down.
You have been listening to radiolawtalk.com, a copyrighted presentation of Radio Law Talk Incorporated.